All right, so we're going to go ahead and start off by blocking in the major masses of the body. And I like to do this with a very crude brush, but to get started, let's create a new layer over here. So hit the plus icon. And we're going to come to this option here called Lightbox. This is like a project directory for ZBrush, and it contains all sorts of cool stuff, including some additional brushes that aren't normally included in ZBrush. And the brush I'm going to use for this is the Ram brush. Now, the Ram brush is just a very nice brush for blocking things in. I'm just clicking there and then clicking in here to access it. And make sure you have X turned on for the symmetry. But the Ram brush will allow us to get this big blocky block in here, and it's just a nice quick way to get started with laying down these landmarks. So let's go ahead and lower this down here and start getting in the major landmarks of the body. If you would like to follow along with your recorche, if you've done a good job with it, or if you don't know what muscles I'm talking about or how they relate to things and you want to be able to see that, if you bring your PureRef over onto ZBrush, there's a really cool feature ZBrush has, which is see-through. It's located at the top here, and it lets you see through this. So you can actually use that. You'll see I'm clicking on this and my PureRef's going to the background, and you can use see-through here. And you can actually work with this see-through, so I can overlap the body onto here to get a better idea of where things are at. So kind of a neat way of working. To make things simpler for you visually, I'm going to refrain from doing that and just show you on screen here. But I wanted to show that to you in case you did want to do a tracing of your recorche, and we might explore that later on, but it's a pretty cool feature. Now let's go ahead and get started on blocking in the torso here. We're going to start with the pectoralis here. The pectoralis is the muscle on your chest. It's going to come from under the armpit, oase, and this is pretty blocky, so this isn't going to be anywhere near refined, but it's going to come from under the armpit and then towards the center of the chest, like so. It has a square angle to it, so you want to make sure you're getting that look. And then we have sort of an indent down the middle here for where the sternum is going to go. While we're here, we can exaggerate the clavicle. If you hold down Alt, it will invert the operation of your brush here, and we could use Alt here to just kind of create that clavicle shape. And remember, it has sort of an S shape to it. It's going to be coming out here and then kind of coming in, maybe a handlebar shape. So it's good to kind of exaggerate that. We can work our way down into the torso to get the thoracic arch in here. We can hide the arms by using Control-Shift and clicking on the torso to see this by itself. If we're okay with seeing that relative to nothing, I like to start by seeing it relative to the whole, and we can get the arch in here, which comes from underneath here up into just below the pectoralis. We can then Control-Shift this, come towards the side here, and that's going to bring us to about the middle. Now this is going to go into the latissimus dorsi, but let's go ahead and finish the front here. Let's get the linea alba, which comes down from the thoracic arch. And you can take a look at the anatomy drawing or anatomy charts for an approximate idea of where this is going to go. It's going to be kind of centralized here, and it's going to come down into the groin area. Following that, we can get to the groin. The groin is going to be kind of the polycleton fold that we talked about. So we're going to have that coming on the side here. I'm going to use Control-Shift with my Select Lasso and Alt to just hide the arms so we can focus in on the torso here. And coming from the side here, I'm going to look for that angle that the external oblique sits at coming forward. And remember, this is also kind of the angle of the iliac crest of the pelvis. It's going to come at an angle there, and then it kind of turns forward into the groin here, down the iliac crest, and it has a bit of an angle to it, so I want to keep that angled if possible. And that's going to give us a better definition to where that groin's going. We'll finish that on the backside when we get the latissimus dorsi going here. But before we do that, let's go back up top and get some definition to the deltoid, which is the shoulder. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click to bring back my arms. The shoulder is going to come off of the clavicle, so we're going to come out here, and then it's going to come forward to a head. Then coming around the backside, it's going to have another angle, and then it's going to come back up top to the top of the scapula, the shoulder blade. So we want to think about where that's going to be approximately and try and aim it there. It's going to be something like that, I think. Yeah, I think that angle is going to get us kind of close to what we want. We can always adjust it later. But that'll get the deltoid going. Following that, we might as well get the trapezius muscle. The trapezius is the big muscle on the backside here. It's going to come from the top here of the deltoid, kind of forming the backside here of the scapula. Remember, it runs along the top of the scapula a little bit, and then it's going to dive down into a triangle that goes about mid-back here, so right around here. And it does have a bit of a line to it, so we can carve a little line into here. And that should be close. I feel like my angle down the back wasn't the greatest, so let me go ahead and adjust that. And I am looking at anatomy charts on the other view, so I suggest the Paul Rocher drawings. Those are very useful. Okay, so that's going to get the trapezius. With that in there, we can kind of carve in the shoulder group, which is just going to come from the deltoid across. So it's going to give us a little notch the shoulders are going to go into. And then we can get into the latissimus dorsi, which is that really long muscle that comes down the back. Now, this is going to come from under the armpit and come down. So I'm just going to hide this. And if we look at this from the side, the latissimus dorsi is going to kind of go from the armpit back down into here, and it comes and it connects into the sacrum, so the bottom of our spine here, our tailbone area. And with that in place, we can clean up some of the other forms really quick. On the torso, just make sure they're connecting. So right here, our thoracic is going to come and tuck, and then we can kind of curve that for that area. And if we want, we can emphasize the spine area here. So that way we get the major portions of the torso blocked in. Now we're going to want to move down to the upper leg for the next section and the lower leg. A lot of the leg groups we're going to get in later, but one of the first one we're going to get in is the sartorius. And remember, the sartorius runs up here from the ASIS, anterior superior iliac spine, down and wraps under the leg, and it comes about midway. Now, this is kind of hard to get in there, but we'll just go for it. It's going to come down like a strap here, and it's going to come down and sort of wrap into the leg here. So you're going to have that separation there between the quadricep and the adductor group. The next thing we'll want to get is the greater trochanter into the side, and I'll hide the arm a little bit here. Remember, the greater trochanter is that bone in the gluteus region that sort of sticks out. So we're going to want to get that in there. Here's our iliac crest, and it's going to be just about midway here. And we can just put a dot into there to give us an area to connect the muscles into. Also remember, it's going to be about the halfway point of the body. So if you wanted to physically measure with something like your finger, you could look and see, is that about halfway? I did roughly good there with it, so I'll call that good. So just keep that in mind. Now, some of the other areas that would be nice to define a little bit better if we switch to the backside is going to be things like the gluteus. This is an area we kind of got lost in our modeling. So we could define the buttocks area here a little bit better, the divide down the body, and then we can angle this out based on where this is located to represent the gluteus maximus in terms of the angle it sits at. Now, be mindful, you want to look at an anatomy chart for this because we want the muscles angle, not the butt's angle. The butt is a superficial feature of the body that is created by fat, and it varies from individual to individual. Muscle, not so much. And the muscle is basically just going to come out at an angle like so. That's going to create that underside there for the buttocks area. While we're on the back side, we could go ahead and define the hamstrings. The hamstrings are the back of this leg. They're just going to come down with a line in the center, and then they split in either direction as we get towards the knee here. So we could get that separation going there to start that definition for that structure. And that should be good for the upper leg. The quadriceps are going to manifest as large forms, so we don't want to separate those out. Moving towards the lower leg, we're going to want to get the kneecap in here. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger using the bracket keys there. and just hold down Alt and just get a nice indication of the knee. The knee should angle down a little bit here, so just be mindful of that, but that should give us an okay look. We can then get down to the lower leg, and on the lower leg, one of the first things we're going to want to get in there is an indication of the shin bone. The shin bone runs down at an angle from the knee here, and it has a little bit of a curve to it. I might want to make my brush a smidge smaller, but it's basically going to go from here, and it's going to have a curve down into the ankle, and if you want to, you could indicate the ankle there. But that curve is going to be where we see the shin bone. It's a pretty important landmark of the lower leg that gives it its characteristic. Then we're going to create the lines for the soleus muscle around the outside. That's going to basically come and cut the side here in half. So it's going to come down like so, and then it's going to go under the Achilles tendon. So we could kind of emphasize that. And there's also sort of an interior element to it, but we'll leave that be for now. We mainly want to get the outside one here, which is kind of straight. I feel like I didn't make it straight enough here, but that should be okay. We can then get the head division of the gastrocnemius. So when we take a look at the head division of the gastrocnemius, we're going to have the lower head. So we can just cut that and then angle this way, angle this way, and then towards the interior here, do the same thing where we run a line down from the bone a little bit more. That's probably more than we need, actually, but this would be the Achilles tendon, and then we'd have the muscle, and then we'd have the soleus on the other side. So that's probably more detailed than we need on those lower legs, but we'll go with that for now. Now we're going to move up to the upper arms and get some more definition here. The first thing we want to do is define the bicep, and it's going to be kind of interesting. We want to leave a gap between these for something called the brachialis muscle. So just be aware of that. With the brachialis muscle, it's a little muscle that sits between the biceps and the triceps. So let's get that chunked in here. I'm going to come to the bicep and just come down the side and turn it forward towards an angle to the arm. And then on the underside, we can do something similar. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click the body, and then I'm going to do that twice. Sometimes it selects a polygon row. If you do that, just kind of click, Control-Shift-Click, and try and do it till it gets rid of the body. So on the inside of the arm here, I'll just come down and come forward. That'll represent the bicep. And then coming to the backside, I can get something that vaguely represents the tricep. So the tricep can be a little bit tricky. It's good to have sort of a definition of where the elbow is going to go because it connects into there. Remember, the elbow is not a bone. It is a structure coming off of the bone. It's going to be right about there for the elbow. It's kind of opposite the bicep. And with that in place, we can think of the tricep heads. So they're going to angle a bit like this. This one's going to come down and around at an angle towards that elbow. Then we have this larger one that comes out, and then we have a little bit of a smaller one that comes out here. And then these connect into a flat area here that we can kind of nudge in. This is going to need a lot of love, but that's going to be, roughly speaking, our triceps. And like I mentioned, there's a line between these. So there's actually a muscle that goes between both of these here and down here as well. Not as well seen, but we'll get that in there when we get to the upper arm study. Now moving to the lower arm, we can start by drawing a line down the center of the arm created by the brachioradialis muscle. So we have these two lines here. From here, we can just kind of create a line going down to the wrist. And that's enough detail for the front. Coming to the backside, we have the indication of the elbow here. We can do dividing lines to separate the extensor and flexor group from the elbow, and that's going to kind of diverge in two different directions when we look at the backside. So if I go ahead and find my elbow here, we're going to have one group going this way, and then we're going to have another group kind of taking off and going the other direction along the bone. So you can kind of think of that, along the bone here, and then the other group's going to be kind of on the opposite way. But for now, we'll just kind of express those as different angles to kind of indicate a divergence from a point here. And we'll get more specific into that as we go. All right, so that should give us a final block-in for what we need, just some landmarks to attach to, some major structures. This, however, does not look great. It's pretty crude, and we'd like something a little bit smoother. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna bake this layer down. If you guys used a layer, if you didn't, congratulations, you get to skip a step. But we're gonna click that bake, so that way this is baked down. And we're going to come into our geometry and lower the divisions here. And I'd say we could probably lower them to either 3 or 4. We have to kind of decide. And what we're going to do is we're going to redivide this to kind of get this detail back. So taking a look at this, I feel like maybe 3 would be a good one for me. I'm going to delete higher here. And then if I divide this time, you'll see it'll give me a nice smooth rendition of what this is going to look like. And we can get back up to our marker here at 9 million. So now these are a little bit smoother. It gives us those landmarks to connect into, so we can start to begin our more detailed study of anatomy. Once we have this in place, we can save. We can go ahead and make a new iteration, which is always a good idea in case anything's wrong with this one. And then we can start to proceed into our individual study of the muscle group. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and just chunk in these land masses so we know where we're going, we know what we're connecting into. You may want to make some corrections at this point if there's anything wrong with the mesh, if any of the proportions look off or any of the forms look off. Looking at the arms, I feel like my arms could use a little bit of work. You might want to just throw a layer on here to do this adjustment. And if you have some sort of point of reference, you can use that. Now, we actually do have a point of reference, which is the anatomy study that was provided as image planes. I have not brought those into my Pure Rough, but I should do that real quick. So I will go ahead and bring in my image planes here, and we'll be able to adjust this. So taking a look at this, if this is our end goal, we could go ahead and square these up. So they're approximately the size of our character as it relates to ZBrush. And you're not going to get it perfect. And you can see I'm using ZBrush's UI to kind of gauge this. We could trigger the see-through here, and we could square this up to check the anatomy. Now, there's obviously some difference in placement of hands. A really cool hotkey you can hit here is V, which will toggle the light on. And if you're not using color, this works. So I want to emphasize this only works if you're not using color. But we could use the see-through now to kind of see how well this is matching in terms of proportion and location. And it actually is matching pretty well overall. I think we did a pretty good job placing some of those muscles. If you hit V again, you can see the placements on some of these and how we'll be able to kind of compare back and forth. So I don't really see any major changes I need to make at this time. The arms are lacking a little bit of bulk, so I might want to come into the geometry here. And a cool trick you can do is lower this. You could isolate the arm even, or in this case, I'd probably get rid of the torso. Use BMV for the move brush, and we could use that see-through here, and we could just nudge these over to have a bit more volume. And I'm just using the move there to do that. You can see I just moved that. And now that's going to have more volume with the torso. But I think that would be kind of the main thing. Then I could turn it to the side here. We could check out the side view. And we can see on the side view there, I am lacking a bit of volume, either in the arm or the back. And it looks like it's probably the back because, yeah. So what I could do there is do something similar where I Control-Shift-Alt and drag around the arms. Then just holding Shift to slide this back into place. And then I could use the move to just move this out to match that volume. With the buttocks here, we could do the same. You can see we're kind of missing this buttocks angle. We could angle that better. And it doesn't have to be perfect. With the leg mass, we could bring that forward. And just remember, we are going to be adding geometry to this. So you don't want to go nuts with this necessarily. but it can be useful. Now, this is an area I might want to double check some of my line work on in terms of the deltoid and the shoulders, the scapula, just to make sure I have a good relationship in terms of what's going on there. And I think we have something that's okay, but you can see the trapezius is a bit narrow on mine. So at a higher subdivision, maybe 5 or 4, I'm using lower subdivisions because they're easy to move. I'm just going to use the move brush and kind of nudge the trapezius to be in the right spot. So that's approximate. So we'll get a lot more of this detail in here as we go, but I think that's a pretty good start. And, definitely use these as a point of reference. It's good to have a 3-dimensional study, and you can pair that with your ecorche. So just do another pass looking at that, just making sure proportions and silhouette are kind of matching. Everything's looking good, and then we can move forward. All right. So as a challenge, go ahead and block in the major masses of the body, save out a new iteration, and we'll go ahead and start in on our study of the individual parts.